Hello there, fellow wanderers of the field. Starless Plains here. Welcome to a game called 6 Days of Snow. It's an anime visual novel that a friend of mine recommended on Steam. Her name is Sue Alpaca. If you wanted to check this game for yourself, the link is in the description below. And if you wanted to check out Sue Alpaca's channel, the link is on her link is on the description below as well. So it follows up by a twist of love, probably by a couple of people who one of them would happen to be a like some kind of poet, and the other one would have to be like an enterpriser or something, a daughter of something. But I don't know. I don't even know much of this game, but I wanted to check this game out. So, well, of course, I was recommended by this, but thank you for recommending this game. So, let's get started. First day. I have to say, the music is so beautiful. It was a dark night, and the snow was falling thick and heavy beyond the window of the car. Everything was pure white, like the saucer of milk has been appended over the earth. It looked pretty. At least, it did when observed from within the fines of the taxi, and I felt a surge of sympathy for whoever might be outside in such a night. The snow can be unforgiving, especially on a mountain like this. Why else would there be any more stories about strange, pale-skinned women that lured unexpected men to their icy graves? In a remote place like this, how long would it take before anybody uncovered your corpse? A day? 2 days? A whole week? Perhaps a month? Being a writer, I couldn't help but ponder such morbid things, though, I admit, crime fiction has never been my forte. It's always been my belief that there is enough unpleasantness in real life. We hardly need to fabricate anymore. Sachiko says that because I'm sentimental. Apparently it's one of my better qualities. Sachiko says sentiment manifests itself in my eyes. I have unusually pale eyes. My wife has quite a way with words. I sometimes think her talents are wasted as a wife and mother, and she might have an untapped acumen for storytelling. She's certainly good at gossiping with the other women who attend at art classes with her every Wednesday. Sachiko, however, always blushes and shakes her head whenever I suggested this, even as a gentle joke. She says she's more than happy looking after me and our 2 sons, searching for any greater purpose in life would be presumptuous. I appreciate it, I suppose. But I wouldn't mind if she had touched more ambition beyond preparing the perfect bowl of miso soup in the mornings. Not that Sachiko's miso soup is anything to be sneezed at. That was one of the things I was going to miss the most, though I thought, as the car drove on through the night. Sachiko's miso soup. Miso soup at the Azami Inn would be perfectly fine. I was sure. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be Sachiko's. This might sound awfully prosaic, I mean. But when food has been prepared by the hands of a woman who loves you, and has loved you for 25 years, it acquires special properties you can't find anywhere else. Maybe that's the best definition of martial bliss. Being able to enjoy breakfast together every morning with a small, shared smile, despite not having all that much talk about it. It's a comfortable conundrum kind of existence, I suppose. But the further I ascend to the mountains, the more I begin to slip away. With each and every mile I covered, the further away my banal life with Sachiko seemed. Soon, small details, the taste of her miso soup, the pseudo-religious watering of much-beloved bougainvilleas, and the pervading smell of soap began to slip away. I must confess, I was not awfully sorry to be saying farewell to any of it. It wasn't that I didn't care for Sachiko, because I did. I still do. I have fallen into a rut, that was all. I have grown too accustomed to one another, and perhaps I was taking Sachiko and her miso soup for granted. It's hard to appreciate somebody when you see them every single day, and you recite the same pleasantries to them, and they repeat the same pleasantries back. It's too predictable. It would be like playing shogi while being able to read your opponent's moves five turns in advance. Where's the fun in that? To put it another way, our daily routine has become far too familiar, to the extent that it was almost painful. I wasn't trying to run away from Sachiko, I told myself. That wasn't it. I needed a change of pace. I wanted to remind myself how much my wife meant to me. I wanted to remind myself why I loved her. I was journeying away from my wife so I can learn to miss her again, which would hopefully make our eventual reunion all the more sweeter. After giving it some thought, I decided upon the perfect location wherein I can ruminate on my marriage. That would be snow-capped mountains in Hakuba, more than half an hour away from human civilization. I just suddenly noticed that civilization was spelled wrong. Pardon me. There would be no people in the Azami Inn to disturb my solitude, just the snow and the stars. And that was fine by me. The young boy driving the taxicab hummed under his breath, a song I did not know, and tapped his fingers against the wheel. "We're almost there," he said, and turned to me and smiled. The darkness obscured much of his face, but I could see the reassuring gap-toothed grin. One of his front teeth was missing. I thought it rude to ask why, so I didn't comment. I couldn't stop myself from fabricating stories. "How far is it now?" I asked him, hugging my trunk a little bit closer to my chest. Sachiko had helped me pack before my departure. I told her she needn't have bothered. She was insistent. Despite being such a quiet, retiring woman, Sachiko can be awfully insistent about the most mundane of things. "No, not too far from now," said the boy, though "boy" might be a touch demeaning, as he must have been in his early 20s. 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5, counting for traffic. That was probably supposed to be a joke. We haven't passed a single car during the journey from the train station. I must admit, I was a bit relieved. The road was poorly lit, and any oncoming cars would have spelt disaster. "It's not like you needed to get there in a hurry, isn't it?" said the boy. What were you doing up near Hakuba? Don't mind me asking." "Oh, I don't mind at all," I said politely. "I'm a writer. I thought going somewhere remote would help me focus, generate a few ideas, that kind of thing." "Oh, an author," he whistled and sounded genuinely impressed. "And anything I know?" "I doubt it. I'm not well known by any means, but I make enough to pay the bills." "Well, what more can a man ask for? I'm not too world-wise. That sounds like a success to me. How many people who want to be authors make so much as a penny?" "Yeah, I suppose," I said, running a hand through my hair. "Sometimes I forget I have a lot to be thankful for." "And what kind of things do you write? Newspaper articles? Journalism?" "Some poetry. And I released a novel a couple of years ago, too." "Novel, is it?" he said, and he whistled again. "Now that is fancy. I could be ferrying around the next Ogai Mori." "Oh, I doubt I would ever reach that much level of fame. I just dabble, really." "Well, I hope you can include me in your next library effort, Mr. Tanabe Eiji." "Alright, Mr. Tanabe. I'll remember that." And he nodded his head determinedly, like a chicken pecking upwards. That was a cruel smile, though, and I chastised myself for thinking such a thing. I didn't realize it, spending so much time of my life inside the city, but I could be quite a snob. That was another reason, I told myself, why going to the countryside would be good. It was always useful to see new sights and broaden my horizons. Open my mind. The moon up ahead, shining in the apex of the sky like a pearl, split the swirling fog and snow with pale rays of light. In the dark, the moonlight looked lethal. Ethereal. It was the kind of moon, so perfectly round and full, that could drive one to madness. You better include me in your next novel, Mr. Tanabe," said the driver with a distinct gap-toothed smile. And I found myself thinking that maybe I would. It wasn't a character that was easy to forget. The teeth helped. "I'm Hanada Yosuke, and pleasure to meet you." "Oh no, the pleasure is all mine," I demurred, and the young taxi driver, Yosuke, tittered. "Incredible. Writer saying it's a pleasure to make my acquaintance. Never thought I'd live to see the day." "He sounds so bemused by the idea," I smiled. "You know, If you really want something interesting to write about, for your next novel, of course, there's no better setting than the Azami Inn. And Yosuke companionably, after a lull in the conversation. It's beautiful around here. Not that I have much of an eye for it. Still, all the snow on the hills, and this quaint little building out in the middle of nowhere. Very pretty. Yes, it sounds delightful. Only two, I think. That should sit you down in the ground. A bit of peace and quiet helps stimulate the imagination, right? That is the general idea. All the noise of the big city can be a bit... I searched for the correct word, but I couldn't find it. Maybe it had been stolen by the snow. Oh, I can imagine, said Yosuke, sensing my discomfort. I lived around here all my life, but still, a big city, eh? A big city indeed. I'd love to go there once or twice, just to look around, but I don't think I could ever settle somewhere like that. From what I've heard, there are too many buildings and far too many people. I like the peace and quiet, though even I get a bit antsy if I had to stay in the Azami Inn for too long. I don't know how Ms. Kakuichi does it. The proprietress? The one and the same, said Yosuke with a nod. She's been living up there for, gosh, I don't know how long. Maybe longer than I've been alive. Because as long as there's been the Azami Inn, there's been Miss Kakuichi. She used to run it with her husband, so maybe she wasn't too lonely before. And he's dead now. Died years ago. I looked at Yosuke, intrigued. Ideas began to grow inside my head, just like acorns sprout into proud oak trees. What happened to Mr. Kakuichi? I asked as casually as I could muster. My efforts were probably in vain. I'd already told Yusuke I was a writer. People never trust writers. At least, you shouldn't. We crowd around misery like vultures. I pick the bones clean until there's nothing left. Yosuke, who didn't seem to be the most intelligent of people, was still sharp enough because he grinned. It was a wolfish grin, all too fitting for the large pearly moon. Ah, so you're interested, are you, Mr. Tanabe? He asked. It is an interesting story, I can't help myself. And rather well known, too. There are all kinds of stories about the Azami Inn, and as I said, and Miss Kakuichi. Not all of them are pleasant, I don't believe half of them, but they're very interesting. I should let you know, before you continue, that I don't write crime stories. Ah, well, more's the pity, said Yosuke with a shrug. You get a pretty young woman and a dead husband, and there are bound to be rumors, but the truth is a lot simpler. He was old, Mr. Kakuichi. A good 2 Ks older than his wife. And you know, when you're old and you're left up in the mountains, chances are you'll catch a cold at some point and you won't be able to fend off. So he died. Just like that? Just like that. Rather anticlimactic, all things considered, but people love talking. You can't stop them talking. Even in a place like this, Yosuke smiled. I talk enough myself. My fiancée, Hatsumi, always berates me. Still, she can't hate it that much, or she wouldn't have agreed to marry me. You have a fiancé? Congratulations! Yosuke thanked me, smiling sheepishly. Honestly, I feel sorry for Miss Kakuichi, all things considered. She must be awfully lonely up there, without a husband. The residents of Higashikawa aren't too keen on her either. Doesn't she have anybody else? She has a daughter, sweet little thing, Reiko. Miss Kakuichi has always been very protective, and no wonder what happened to her husband. Reiko. I nodded my head. I would have to file this away from future reference. Does she have any stuff? Does she have any staff? Oh, she employs a few girls. My Hatsumi was one of them. But it's a small business. She doesn't get many customers, you see. I see, I said. And I did see. I looked around the window and I could see the hill covered in snow. With yet more snow falling, I saw only too clearly. I could imagine many people coming to Azami Inn. Not even those who were passionate about skiing. There were places to stay that were closer to the main roads, where you didn't have to hire a taxi and wend your way through the mountains for over half an hour to reach your destination. If Sachiko were here, I knew what she would say. None of this was very sensible. Still, as I wasn't a sensible man, but a sensitive one, This kind of location would, as Yosuke had said, suit me down to the ground. Oh, pretty artwork. I apologize for arriving so late. My train was delayed. It's quite alright. I expected as much, given all the snow. The woman, I presume, is Miss Kakoichi, replied. I'm happy to receive any customers, no matter how late they may arrive. Business has been slow? What do you expect? She asked, with a touch of my wry amusement to her tone. Her voice was soft, but there was a certain bite to it, some hardness I was not able to pin down. Perhaps a touch of hardness was only to be expected, coming from a woman who has lived in this inn high up in the mountains for very so long. Had she been softer, I wonder, when her husband was still alive? I would never know. Now, Miss Kakoichi. How can I describe her? Words failed me at the time, and they failed me even now. I suppose, if I had to put it a single word, she was beautiful. But that wasn't entirely right. She was the kind of woman who had been beautiful once. Beautiful enough to drive men to distraction, but old age has tempered some of her beauty, softened the edges so it no longer has an acute, piercing effect. That was a good thing, I think. Such beauty can be such a weapon, like an arrow. But this was an arrow whose tip has been sanded smooth, I mean. Her hair was dark and glossy, cut into a neat bob, reminiscent of a Kokeshi doll. It was an unusual choice for an older woman. She must have been in her 40s, but it only served to heighten my interest in her. Her eyes were the color of roasted tea leaves, and they were lined with thick, long eyelashes. When she blinked, her lashes fluttered in a beguiling manner that cast shadows against her face. Her skin was pale, and though there were some wrinkles around her mouth, it was unblemished, saved for two small moles, no bigger than pinheads beneath her right eye. Excuse me. She wore a modest kimono of muted colors and stood there regally, her hands held at her front. If looked at from afar, she could have been forgiven for thinking she was 10 or 20 years younger than she really was. But time waits for no man. At any rate, Miss Kakoichi didn't seem to be the kind of person who steeped herself in her own nostalgia. Everything about her, from her tone of voice to the way she stood, suggested she was far too sensible to bother with such nonsense. She wasn't sentimental. Something about her posture almost seems to defy sentiment. She wasn't like me. I suppose we were quite a poor match. In any event, I hope you enjoy your stay at the Azami Inn, said Miss Kakoichi. It was a line she must have delivered many times, and she said it beautifully, like a skilled artisan might pluck a heart-rending melody from a koto. I must confess, I felt rather abashed. I had been imagining, in my city-born and bred hubris, that the folk who reside in the countryside were simpler than I, somehow. I had been wrong. I am Kakoichi Kayo, she said, by the means of making my acquaintance, though there was a certain reticence to her tone. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, I said, bowing my head. My name is Tanabe Eiji. Mr. Tanabe, Miss Kakoichi repeated in a small nod of her head. When she said my name, commonplace thought it was, its properties seemed to change in some curious manner. European alchemists might have strived for years to turn base metals into gold, but Miss Kakoichi has succeeded in a certain kind of thaumaturgy, however that's pronounced, of her own. Well, if I need to introduce myself any further, I have been running the Azami Inn for some 14 years, ever since the death of my husband. I'm sure Yosuke has told you about that already. He might have mentioned a thing or two, yes. You don't need to spare my feelings. I know what the people around here say. They enjoy their gossip. There's not much else to gossip about. I don't think Mr. Hanabi meant anything by it. He was just making conversation. At any expense of my dignity, I don't doubt. said Miss Koichi, I sleep. Though Yusuke hadn't said anything incriminating, I felt myself feeling guilty, as if I had conspired against her. Let us move from this subject, she said, noticing my discomfort. It is unpleasant, particularly after such a long journey now. Miss Koichi explained the general running of the inn to me. When meals were prepared, where the hot springs were, and who to speak to if I had a complaint, while I nodded dumbly, stunned into silence. So, she said, when she had finished her short business spiel, I trust this is satisfactory? That's more than satisfactory, thank you, I said, stuttering. Why was I stuttering? Being around Miss Koichi held under the steady gaze of her dark brown eyes, and the most incredible effect upon me. I felt not like a grown man with 2 sons, but a naughty child, being scolded by a father for playing too zealously about the Zelkova tree in our garden. Miss Koichi was probably a few years younger than I, but she regarded me archly, like one who had seen far more than I could ever imagine. I know it might sound rather harsh, but I understood immediately why the residents of the nearby village didn't like her very much. She was not a likable woman. I shall get Reiko to show you to our room. She may as well make herself useful, said Miss Koichi. With that declaration, the proprietress turned, her head bobbed hair fluttering, and the call out in tones that would have made an emperor balk, Reiko, we have a customer. There was a scuffling of feet as Reiko hastened to answer her mother's call. I picture her as a skinny, uncomfortably so, with big eyes and lips pulled into a permanent frown, her head bent and her gait stumbling. But the Reiko who was answered Miss Koichi's summons was rather different. My imagination has betrayed me yet again. She was rather young, that much was true. Still a teenager, I suppose, and she was slight, but not in an awkward manner. Her limbs were pale and slender, and she moved like a little ballerina. Yes, you called me Mother? She looked just like Miss Koichi. Or had done. I imagine before her old age has seen fit to sap away her youthful charm. Reiko had a beauty mark beneath her eye, though it was located under her left, not her right. Other than that, it was almost perfect facsimile of her mother's, like she had some kind of copy. A homunculus child raised in a glass jar. But these thoughts were rather too fanciful. This is Mr. Tanabe, said Miss Koichi, gesturing towards me. He has recently arrived from Tokyo. Can you take his bag and show him to this room? It's the one you were preparing earlier, on the west side. Of course, said Reiko, with a small bow of her head. I shall do it at once. She bent to pick up my bag, first brushing the sleeve of her kimono one side when... No, that will never do. Reiko flinched at the reprimand. She was now halfway between receiving my case and standing straight. The sleeves of her kimono were still rolled back, and I could see her arms. They were pale as the snow that fell outside, shot through with delicate blue veins. Though I wanted to, I could not bring myself to look away. When you are picking up luggage, Reiko, you should not let your sleeve bunch up about your elbows. It's unseemly, said Miss Koichi. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, said Miss Koichi coolly. Or I've told you this time and time again. Try to remember this next time, please. Alright. Reiko sounded too despondent. Any words of reassurance I might have thought to offer died on my tongue. I had already divined, during this most perfunctory of greeting, that her mother scolded her quite a lot. Wow, I have to say the artwork is really well. Reiko led me to my room in silence, my suitcase held in her arms. If the case was heavy for her, I did not know. She didn't slow down, and neither did she seem hampered by her burden. Her footsteps were slow and regular, like that of clockwork, hemmed in her by her kimono, and she could only take short, dainty steps. Right foot in front of the left, then left in front of the right, then repeats. I follow along behind her like an attentive schoolboy. The wooden hallway was dimly lit, and I could hear the sound of the wind whistling outside. My footsteps made the floor creak ominously. I tried to think of things to say, but nothing sounded quite right. The weather's awful around here, isn't it? Would have been too pedestrian. You really do have beautiful eyes. Would have been far too forthcoming. Is your mother always like that? Would have been too personal. Despite having many things I wanted to say, I could say nothing. I didn't know why, but I wanted to talk to this girl. Maybe it was pity, because of the way she had flinched when her mother had spoken to her. Really, she must have been lonely. If Yosuke has suspected Miss Kokoichi of melancholia, then what about her daughter? Reiko's hair fluttered behind her, inky black, like a veil in the darkness. But, though she was small, Reiko did not tire in her march. Instead, she continued as quiet as a mirror and just as inscrutable. Even back then, I was enamored with her. Maybe it was the romance of the situation. How could you blame me? There was something very poetic about Reiko's plight, an uncommon beauty, hidden from prying eyes, lost amidst the ice and snow. After 20 seconds or so, though it seemed like longer, Reiko's footsteps stopped. She halted by a nondescript wooden door, much like the others that lined the hallway. Your room, she said, by means of explanation. Not that I needed explaining. I thanked her all the same, and took my case from her outstretched hands. Our fingers brushed for less than a second. If I had been a younger boy, Kenji's age, perhaps, I fear I may have blushed. It's rather late, and we don't normally serve food at this time, said Reiko, addressing the floor rather than my face, but I'm sure the cook would be more than happy to prepare something for you. Mother said you traveled a long way. If it's alright, I replied, though it's been some 5 hours since I had last eaten. I don't want to inconvenience you. But you're a guest, said Reiko. At this time, she did lift her head. Doesn't that give you the right to inconvenience us? Just a little? You're paying for the privilege. I blinked. Words once more conspicuously absent. She was actually smiling. So she did not dislike me, and neither was she afraid. She could have been, to joke me so casually, for that was what it was. A joke. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. It was a small laugh, really. But then again, Reiko's smile has been rather demure. A hearty chuckle wouldn't have been suited the atmosphere, and I have never been once to laugh that much. I'm too self-conscious. But Reiko made me laugh all the same. Well, you might have a point, I said. I suppose I wouldn't mind some green tea. I need a bit of warming up. I know, said Reiko with a nod of her head. It can't be horribly cold around here. I hope my room has a kotatsu. Of course, we live in the mountains. It would be a sin not to have a kotatsu, or guests might catch their deaths of cold, she said, throwing her arms in the air for emphasis. I smiled. Well, I wouldn't want that. I don't intend to stay here that long. Though the mountains were picturesque, I did not fancy extending my trip. A most unfortunate side effect of death is that it tends to render people immobile, tied to one place for the rest of their, well, not lives. I don't blame you, said Reiko seriously. I wouldn't stay here if I had the choice. Which I don't. A small sigh. Oh well, I shouldn't say things like that. Mother will be cross with me. She said it was bad for business. I think things are stacked against us already. But what do I know? You seem to be quite knowledgeable, in my humble opinion. Thank you, she said, with a bow of her head. Her hair fluttered against a sudden draught of icy air. I knew was because of the wind, but seized by sentimentality, I would help but imagine it was because she was so very full of life. Reiko was livelier far than she had been before. The sudden contrast between her demeanor, trampled by Lily persona, and the new one I was witnessing, witty, funny, and unabashedly charming, caught me off guard. Could the caterpillar have emerged from its chrysalis in a scan of 5 seconds? But no. Such transformations do not take place so rapidly. Not in the real world. I wondered. Did Reiko's newfound freeness have anything to do, perhaps, with the absence of her mother? Alright, I'll see about the green tea, or perhaps a simple bowl of rice porridge. I think you should get something in your stomach. Do I look peaky? Reiko pretended to ponder, one hand beneath her chin. Perhaps a bit tired. Long train journeys do that, especially at my age. I wonder. I've never been on a train before, said Reiko. There was something wistful about her tone. Her eyes were misty and far away. She was so transparent, her thoughts flicker across the surface of her mind like ripples in a pool. But then, Reiko shook her head and collapsed her hands, and the illusion was over. Right. Green tea, rice porridge. Please feel free to make yourself at home and discover the delights of the Azami Inn. Thank you for your hospitality, I said, bowing my head. I intended to. Oh, and it's perfectly fine if you don't want to use the kotatsu, but I'm sure the fire in the brazier has burnt down before you sleep. We wouldn't want you to start a fire. No, I said, with a shake of my head. Didn't want that. No, not at all, Reiko repeated. But I couldn't help but wonder. Inside her amber eyes, I swore I could see flickering flames. Well, I have to say, this is pretty surprising for a visual novel like this. Alright, so let's continue. Alright. Reiko was as good as her word. She returned to her room momentarily, the green tea and rice porridge on a tray. They were both piping hot. She did not linger. I would have liked to converse with her further. That would have been improper. A woman should not tarry for so long in a man's private quarters, though Reiko was not a woman, really, so much as a girl. Reiko's kimono flattened out her figure, making it nigh impossible to tell whether she had curves or not. But her age was apparent by the tone of her voice and the softness of her skin. Not that such detail improved her situation. If anything, made them worse. A woman in a man's room at night is improper enough, but a teenage girl? That is truly a source of scandal. Exactly, I wouldn't agree on that. Scandal in the eyes of the newspaper, but sensationalist romance transmuted by the hand of an author. It all depends on how you frame things. In any case, Reiko departed with a non-familiar tap, tap, tap of her wooden sandals against the tatami mats. I was left alone. The green tea was delicious. The leaves brew perfectly, and the rice porridge was thick and nourishing. I enjoyed the food a great deal, though not as much as Sachiko's. Sachiko knows exactly how I prefer my tea, and she could steep the leaves in perfect accordance to my preference, down to the last millisecond. Of course, Sachiko's tea would be superior. I'd been married for her for more than 20 years. It is a most curious phenomenon. However, the man accustomed to perfection will bring to tire of it. Is there anything more selfish than a man who cannot be satisfied? Sometimes, I have to wonder. It was still snowing outside. I could see the snow in the air, falling thick and fast beyond my window. The sight of it made me feel warmer than perhaps I was, for the room was cold and seemed to bleed heat from the tatami mats. Fortunately, the kotatsu helped. Warmed both inside and out. Tired from my journey, I turned in for the night half an hour later. I think I might have dreamt about Reiko. Second day. Alright, so I'm definitely gonna stop right over here. That has been day 1 of the game. I'm actually quite in awe by the artwork of this. I'm quite fascinating. So far, I know things been really slow in the beginning of the game, but of course, all games start out slow. But this has actually been pretty good. Let's just say the artwork is beautiful. Everything like the words and all. Sorry, I'm just like in awe with the artwork, but everything's been pretty good. Sorry if I'm like stumbling in a lot of words. I mean, I'm still trying to beat out through the cold that I've been having for the past week or so, but at least I'm starting to feel better. But that's been day 1 of 6 days of snow. We'll pick off on the second day in the next episode. So, alright, that's all for now. Thank you all for watching. Hope to see you in the next episode. See you then.